What's up, guys? It's Nick Ball, your host of the Monster of the Miles podcast. For those who didn't already know, I'm a varsity runner at South Lyon East High School, and today our guest is the varsity runner from South Lyon High School. So why don't you introduce yourself, Ryan?
All right, hi, I'm Ryan Cooper. Like Nikhil said, I'm a varsity runner at South Lyon High School, and my 5K PR is a 16:55, and my 3,200 meter PR is a 10:54. So,
So how's training and life been in general?
pretty good. Yeah, I mean, my training's been a little inconsistent. I just got finished with a cold, so I had to take a couple days off to help recover, and it's just been kind of hard recently in the winter trying to get full recovery and training in. But I've been trying to be pretty consistent. I'm trying to work towards mileage now that the weather's getting a little bit better and it's getting a little more easier to run on trails and things like that. So yeah.
And I also noticed you didn't do any indoor meets last year, did you?
No, last year I did not do any indoor meets. No, last year, I mostly was just doing training and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah, so I've been doing a few this year. Why don't you walk us through how those have looked for you?
Yeah, so I've mostly done most of my meets at the lab, which stands for the Lincoln Athletic Building in Ypsilanti, Lincoln, High School. That's where we've been doing most of our indoor meets. We had one at SVSU, which is Saginaw Valley State. But yeah, the lab meets have been going pretty good. Mostly I've been running the 1500, um, the 1600, and then I've done a couple 800s, and a couple 4x4s and 4x8s. But yeah, no. So other than that, they've been doing pretty good. So
How do you feel about your time so far?
pretty good honestly. I'm pretty happy with them. My 1600 that I did 2 weeks ago was pretty good. I ran a 5:09, so I was kind of hoping to go sub 5 honestly there, but it was my first meet running the 1600 so far, so I was pretty happy with my time. I'm going to run it again actually this weekend, so hopefully there I can do a sub 5:05 at least. So, yeah.
Yeah, I can only imagine with like your goals and stuff. You're probably excited. Like, do you what was your mile PR from last season? Like 5:10 something?
It was a 5:15-ish around there. I didn't run the mile a whole lot last season. I'm mostly a 3,200 runner. So that was mainly what I was focusing on last season. My big goal was to break 11 minutes in the 2 miles. So, I was really focusing and working towards that. So, there were 2 or 3 meets I think where I ran the 1600. Other than that, I was mostly focusing on the 2 mile.
Yeah, so training's probably played into your confidence and stuff because not that you can't do it, but 9 seconds is a big jump. How do you think training plays a role in how
Oh,
you prepare
it's
for it?
definitely a big role. I mean, I think last track season, I was really focused on making sure I was recovering well because the season, my freshman cross country season, I got injured. I got a stress fracture about a quarter way of the way through the regular season or like the actual season. So missed the rest of cross country season and couldn't start running until the end of November almost. But after that, I really tried to slowly build up my base miles. Just try to slow like build miles, and then as time progressed, as December, I was building up my miles, and then um, January and February tried to work in a little speed, little tempo runs, threshold, easy stuff though for speed wise. But then once track season hit about March, I think I was fully, I'd done the right things and I'd recovered right, and done the correct training for that to work in speed fully, and then that led me to last season being able to run under 11 minutes in the 2 mile, and then this cross country season as well. I was really trying to break under 17 minutes in the 5K, and I was really pushed by that too because one of our other runners, Charlie Kosman, got injured about halfway through the season. He got a hip fracture, so he was our number one runner. I was our number two runner, so I noticed I really had to step up for our team and everything when they needed me. So I tried to step up in training wise, and I just noticed training two really helped. I tried to push guys more on our team, but also tried to push myself, saying, if I'm not going to do it, who else is going to do it? So I tried to do that, and yeah.
So let's dig more into the stress fracture. Like, how exactly did it show up?
Yeah, so again, it was my freshman cross country season, so a little over a year ago now. And I first noticed signs of it was I my stress fracture. I should first start off by saying it was on my I think tibia or fibula, so it's kind of towards down your ankle. But yeah, no, I started to notice pain there. Um, and it was really weird. I didn't know what was happening fully. And it was different than just like a sore muscle or something like that because it was like tender to the touch. Like when I would, like touch it or something like that, or like anybody else would, it was like it would hurt and it would shock and pain. So I knew there was kind of something different than it, and that it wasn't just a normal kind of injury. So I first went to our trainer at the high school, and he said it wasn't anything. The first couple days, I think I just went there. I got a heating pack on it, and went out on my run. And obviously, on my run, it did not feel great. Like I would run a mile, and then I just couldn't run anymore. So I knew something like not, something was manifesting that I didn't want to. So, yeah. So then we had a meet actually, a day later about when after my stress fracture sign showed up, and I told my coach I didn't think I could run in it, and he obviously agreed. He said that it didn't look normal and that he didn't want me running in it. So he said he wanted me to go to the doctor. So I just went to my regular pediatrician. She said it was probably just an overuse injury and to give it a couple days rest. So I kept giving it rest, but my mom eventually, about a week after that, maybe not even, my mom was like, I think we got to take you to a I don't know if they call them, but like a doctor that specializes in taking care of bones and things like that. So um, we went to a bone doctor, and he just kind of, looked at it and he took some x-rays. And after that, he noticed that I officially had a stress fracture. He said, or the beginning stages of a stress fracture. So I had to wear a boot for, I think, 6 weeks. No, yeah, I think I had to wear a boot for 6 weeks, and then I couldn't run for another 6 weeks after that. So there was a full 12 weeks of, not running, and that really just kind of shocked me. I was in the middle. It was, not even the middle of my cross country season, and I didn't know what to do. I was like, somewhat middle of the cross country season, my freshman cross country season. I didn't know what to do. Um, and I was just kind of shocked by, I couldn't run anymore. Running had been my lifestyle for a long time, and I couldn't run for a full 12 weeks. That just really shocked me. And I didn't know, kind of fully what to do, what the correct steps to take were. And, I just, I had a lot of help though, luckily. My coach was a really big help. He kind of led me through some different things to do. My doctor, who I also visited, he gave me quite a few things that I could do. So I really, during that time while I was wearing my boot, I tried to get on ellipticals and bikes and things like that, and, that obviously weren't impact, and I could wear my boot while I was doing it. And then there were also a couple of times where I was able to go into the pool and do some like water running, I think is what they call it, where I was just able to run in the water and things like that. So that really kind of helped me. And I think maintained some level of fitness so I didn't fully lose my endurance over those 12 weeks. But yeah, so that was kind of how I continued through it. But obviously, it's still like, that was, how I continued to keep my fitness. But it was just strange. I had a lot of energy, I noticed, more because I couldn't practice. I wasn't running. Um, and it was kind of, disheartening too to see because we were towards that back half of the cross country season when you get to start to become really competitive. You get to your county meets, to your you're just your faster meets, and I'm seeing all these guys that I was running with just start to run great times in the 17:30s, and things like that. And I PR'd and luckily got my varsity letter at a 19:20 my freshman season, so I was happy that I got my varsity letter. I just realized I could have done so much better and so much more. And these guys, I was running with, I noticed they just were having such a big improvement, towards that latter half of the season. And it just kind of shocked me, to see that that's what I could have been doing, but instead I was injured, so.
So how did the stress fracture impact your future training and stuff? Like how did it impact how you train and like uh, even like maybe bringing you down a bit?
Yeah. Um, so definitely like right after the stress fracture, I was taking it very, very easy. Like, the first couple weeks after, I was doing a mile or two at most, just to, because I didn't want to obviously go back to injuring myself. And when you're coming right back, after an injury like that, it does take, it's very easy to re-injure yourself. So, I was trying to be very careful with that. And, while I was doing that, I was still, doing elliptical and bike and things like that. So yeah, I was, that was a big part in the first couple weeks. After that, eventually as track season got closer, I was starting to build up more miles. getting, to 3, 4, 5 miles a day, or like, and just slowly starting to build up. And then once track season started, I was pretty much back to full health, I would say. And, I was able to do, um, you know, pretty much be able to be back at full ability. I was doing speed work, I was doing, a long run every once in a while. So yeah, no, I think, as time progressed, I was able to get back into, my regular flow of training. But, I think overall, training wise, it kind of showed me that, I can't just like all of a sudden jump into training because that, it was my freshman year of high school that I got it last year. And I think the main reason was because I was putting on too many miles at once, In middle school, because I ran all throughout middle school, we were doing, 3 miles at most a day. We were doing maybe 15 miles, 20 miles at most in a week. And then from high school, I decided to jump in and do, multiple miles, do multiple runs a day, just jump into miles too quickly and jump into training too quickly. And I noticed, that's just not healthy. I need to, be consistent and build compared to just all of a sudden jumping in. So I think that was a big thing that it showed me. And that, I need to be more consistent. And that also, too, I'm not obviously as, old as some of the guys I was, wanting to run with and wasn't as strong as some of them and, didn't have as many miles and couldn't, just what didn't have the same physical abilities they had at that point. So it showed me, too, that, everyone's at a different level and that you shouldn't be chasing what other people are doing. You should be doing what is best for you and what is best for your training plan. And I listened, after that to my coach. My coach tried to, talk me through it after my stress fracture and told me that, that I needed to focus more on myself and, what I was doing compared to what others were doing. So that was just a big, big, thing in how to recover. And then the other thing too that it showed me was, I needed to obviously focus more on nutrition. I wasn't, focusing on nutrition as much. And, it showed me that, I need to focus a lot on nutrition, and eating the proper foods and, knowing when to eat the proper foods and things like that. And also strength training too. I wasn't doing a ton of strength training before then. And I started to work in more strength training, hip exercises, like, regular, like, leg exercises, things like that. So just strength training exercises that help me kind of build muscle, to prevent, a thing happening like that in the future. So, yeah.
Yeah, so how have you like adapted your training to that sort of stuff? Because it sounds like you're doing pretty good, you added stuff, but like what stuff that you stopped doing to make sure that that doesn't happen again? Obviously, other than just like blatantly overworking.
Yeah, so other than blatantly overworking, I've kind of tried stopped to look at what other people are doing and just say, well, if this person's doing this, I have to do this. I have my, everybody has their own training plan and you got to stick to your training plan or else you're going to get injured. That's pretty much a guarantee for anybody. So I kind of stopped looking what other people are doing and tried to focus on myself. And, if I did see something that someone was doing, like a workout or something that I thought was interesting, I'd talk to my coach about it. And he'd say, well, I think that you are at the right fitness level to do that. I think we can, do that maybe sometime this week or something. Or I don't think you have the, or saying, the opposite. I don't think you have the right fitness level. Maybe we can work you up to doing a workout like that or, getting up to doing something like that, but you're not there yet. So, I think, recognizing those things and those patterns, and yeah, and then I think, also too, I've tried to, be better about what I eat in a day and, kind of my nutrition and like everything that I eat in a day. I try to stay away from sugar as much, even though I will say I do have a big sweet tooth, but I try to stay away from that stuff.
And it's also important to know that that's like a big part of discipline because it's even if it doesn't seem like it in the moment, like believe me, it's much easier and better to like lose one session or workout. And I wouldn't even say lose it, because there's a reason you're not doing it. But it's better to not do that and like lose that workout than to lose an entire season or something.
Yeah, definitely. Um, like I was talking about food, I know you have a very big, um, opinion on, what the right foods are and, you're very disciplined in how you eat and everything. What would you say is kind of how you focus on, nutrition and diet and things like that?
Yeah, so like I make sure to obviously not starve myself. As Ryan said, like getting enough food and the right foods at the right times is very important. And I place a pretty big emphasis on like eating relatively clean. Like I'm not just eating salads and stuff. Like, I eat sandwiches. I eat chips a lot, actually. That's one of my guilty pleasures. But when it comes to pre-run snacks, I don't slam like a bag of nerd clusters. I'll eat like a fruit or something, or like post-run or workout. I'm not gonna have like the super high sugary protein bar. I'm gonna have like a more healthy protein bar. And this, you can do that. But like these are just like stuff I do just to challenge myself personally, and make me more disciplined. Because having that stuff as a runner, like you really just need all the food you can get, especially once you get to a certain level. Like if you're hitting over 30 or 40 miles a week, I'd say you just gotta eat. Um, Especially if you don't like to eat, you just gotta pile food in. But eating clean can make that a little harder. So just do whatever works for you, though. As long as you're not getting chronically injured or anything bad is happening, you're doing all right. Yeah, so I think that was a really good podcast. A lot of important points. Nutrition and listening to your body is very important, and having competition in rivalries is also a good thing too. So, do you have any last comments before we
Yeah.
finish this off?
Yeah, no, I think that, it's just important to know to stay true to yourself and to your training plan and to listen to your coaches and, your coaches know what's best for you. Um, and so I would just, follow your training plan. And also, communication with people, with your coaches, with doctors, with just people in general. Communication is very important. So if anything does ever pop up, you have people to talk to and, yeah. So I just say communication is important and that, you gotta stay consistent with yourself and not compare yourself to what other people are doing.
All right, thanks for coming on the podcast,
Yeah,
Ryan.
thank you for having me.
Hopefully, we'll see you guys in another episode of the podcast soon. Stay smart and stay speedy.